having me. It's always an honor to speak with Marassi. I think it is of extreme importance to be proactive. As I was saying in the seminar this morning, it's not enough to wait for a dispute to arise before you start thinking about how to resolve that dispute. It is absolutely crucial and essential that you begin to think about disputes while you're negotiating a contract. Because while you're negotiating a contract, even though that things all seem great with the other party, that is when you can effectively take measures to understand how to resolve that dispute if it were to come up. And that will lead you to build proper mechanisms in your contract to resolve a dispute when it arises. So proactive is absolutely key. Well, I've been out in the UAE for just shy of 5 years, and it's absolutely incredible to me how advanced the UAE has become, especially Dubai, in terms of becoming a proper global maritime hub. That doesn't say that the work has stopped, but I think that there's an absolute initiative from all sectors and the government to make Dubai a maritime hub. When I arrived, there was no EMAC, there was no arbitration law, there was none of these things that are increasingly trying to make the UAE not just a regional player, but an international player in the maritime sector. That doesn't mean that the work has stopped. There's still ways to go. There's a need to look at the maritime code and see about updating it. A thought about having specialty admiralty courts, for example, what the DIFC's role is going to be in that. But I think that a lot of great steps have taken place, and I have no doubt that there will be even better steps in the future. It's an excellent question. I think at the very least, every company should at least do an annual checkup to visit what they have done, what they're planning to do for the future, to really just have a sit down with their internal and external lawyers to see where they're going. Is that enough? It depends on the business that you're in. It depends where in the maritime scene you are, what kind of expansions you're foreseeing. It's really not a one-size-fits-all. Just like in the analogy that I made during the presentation about medicine, some people can just go for an annual checkup and they get a clear bill of health and they walk out and they won't need to see a doctor until next year. Other people may need to visit their doctor every 3 months to make sure that they're on track with whatever needs to be altered. So I think approaching your business and treating your business the same way that you would treat your own personal health is really the best route. So you need to sit there and think about what kind of contracts you've entered into, what sort of disputes that you've had in the past, what you're planning on doing in the next 6 months to 12 months, and have a think. Hiring a competent lawyer is absolutely crucial. And not just necessarily focusing on the cheapest lawyer, but one on quality and competency. And that lawyer will be able to recommend to you what you need to do and how you can proceed forward. Shipping is generally a somewhat behind the times in terms of its legal analysis, but also in terms of adopting technologies. Technology is advancing at an absolutely rapid pace, and law always has a problem keeping up with technology. So all of these things, combined with the fact that shipping and maritime is an international business, make it a very, very difficult place to resolve disputes when they arise. So it's absolutely crucial to be ahead of the game rather than waiting for a dispute to arise.
There will be nobody in the maritime industry that's ever willing to admit that times are good. Times are always hard for anyone involved in maritime. With reason, yes. Without reason, yes, also sometimes. So, whereas I'd say that obviously the general economic backdrop does present considerable challenges both globally and regionally, There are very positive signs that the industry will react well to the challenges that are faced by the changing backdrop of technology, but it is up to those people within the industry itself to actually recognise those challenges and then take positive, proactive steps to make themselves ready for the technology of the future. This really follows on from the backdrop of what we've been talking about in the presentation, is that there's always a necessity to anticipate that things may, can, and may, probably, will actually go wrong. Maritime it's a risk-based industry. It's of necessity a high-risk industry, both because there are multiple partners involved in any particular transaction, both because the nature of the finance arrangements for the maritime industry are highly dependent upon each other with a lot of working parts. And the ultimate need is for actually somebody to take a step back and say, because we've done something 10 times in the past, 15 times in the past, 20 times in the past, that does not necessarily mean that this time or the next time it will actually work. And we have a world where there are huge technological changes coming along to everyone, the maritime industry no less than anyone else. And particularly have in mind the ultimate effect of blockchain upon the way that certainly the financial aspects of the shipping industry, the logistics and supply chain will be managed. And those do need to be addressed and given proper consideration and worked into documentation so that it will not leave everyone wrong-footed when those things themselves begin to go wrong. Dubai and the UAE generally has made massive strides in the last 25, 30 years. And the maritime industry within Dubai has made considerable strides in the 20 years that I've lived in this particular region. It is something that is changed out of all recognition to what it was when I first arrived. But I think that there's actually a genuine energy and a genuine wish to incorporate the shipping and maritime sector within the wider vision for Dubai that's manifested itself in the way that EMAC's been created, that's manifested itself within the way that the law has developed both within the DIFC and onshore Dubai. I mean, ultimately we will have a new maritime code. We already have a new arbitration law. We're making all sorts of strides in judicial training and in the backdrop of training for wider maritime professionals, which I think will, in fact, given time, put Dubai into a role as a hub. And we are ideally geographically located between the major maritime hubs in Europe and the major maritime hubs in the Far East, which will allow us ultimately to take our rightful place as one of the great maritime hubs in the world. That will take time. As we said, the creation of EMAC itself is a very recent innovation, but it will take time for the market to generate confidence in the system, and it will take time for there to be sufficient expertise associated with those three elements, which will ultimately underpin the status of Dubai as a maritime hub.